Yes, thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Jun-hyeon. I play as a striker on the show Let's Play Soccer Together. Also, I used to be a national skeleton athlete. And now I am working as a sports administrator and commentator. Has anyone here ever ridden Atlantis, the roller coaster at Lotte World? Yes. It seems many of you have. It's the fastest roller coaster at Lotte World. I went there about 5 years ago, and I haven't been back since. And I'll tell you why. It was probably right after I returned from overseas training during my days as an athlete. Since I had been training hard, I thought I should release some stress, so I went to Lotte World. I went there remembering the thrilling experience I had before, but the feeling was completely different after riding it before starting skeleton, and then again after returning from skeleton training abroad. Does anyone here know how fast a skeleton sled can go? Can anyone guess what the top speed is? Well, someone just said 200 kilometers per hour. I think it's a little less than that. 150 kilometers per hour? That's pretty close. The answer is 140 kilometers per hour, and the average speed is 120 per hour. To put it in perspective, it's about the speed that cars go on the highway. The average speed is between 100 and 120 kilometers per hour, which is pretty fast. In a way, you could say it feels like riding a motorcycle while lying down. For some people, this Atlantis could be a whole new challenge. But since I've ridden skeleton, I can say that nothing else feels as fast as skeleton. So when riding Atlantis, turning at each corners made me think, what's this? It felt as if I was moving in slow motion, like at half speed. But then someone next to me started to scream like crazy. So then I thought, it's a good thing I decided to ride skeleton. That's what I thought. By the way, do you guys know the movie Cool Runnings? It's actually quite similar to my story. I am from a city called Gwangyang, where it hardly ever snows. So from the beginning, starting skeleton was actually pure recklessness. I first entered Korea National Sport University, not as an athlete, but as a regular student. One day, I went to school and saw a banner right in front of the campus that said, National Team Selection for Bobsleigh and Skeleton. But to be honest, at Korea National Sport University, athletes are the main focus. And there's only those who rank in top 3 at National Sports Festival come to Korea National Sport University. There are a lot of benefits for pro athletes. And tuition, room and board, training expenses, everything is free for the national team members. As a regular student, I didn't receive any of these benefits at all. You can imagine how much I wanted to become an athlete. Naturally, I started to admire them. So when I heard they were holding athlete selection trials, I absolutely had to give it a try. Back then, since there was no sliding track, the selection criteria for athletes were basic tests like the 30 and 50 meters dash, standing long jump, and so on. Although I wasn't good at anything else, I was among the fastest back in my hometown, so it was a perfect fit for me. I remember that among the athletes who applied for skeleton during the selection trials at the physical education college, I was at the top. So the professor made me a suggestion that I actually try becoming an athlete, and I joined the sled team and officially registered as an athlete. Since that I was about to do it anyway, I thought I might as well learn it properly. But I didn't just stop there. Although I was just starting out, I set my sights on becoming a national team member. Originally, whenever I take on a challenge, I tend to set these ridiculously ambitious and almost reckless goals. So as soon as my first winter break as a college freshman started, I bought a plane ticket to Calgary, Canada. I couldn't really speak English, and to top it off, it was actually my very first trip abroad. So the distance from my homestay to the stadium was such that I had to take the bus and train about 3 or 4 times, and it took around 4 hours round trip. But every week, I would go to the stadium like that on weekends. The temperature would drop to as low as minus 30 degrees Celsius. It's something unimaginable in Korea. So even if you just stand still, your knees ache from the cold and your nose starts to freeze. When you breathe, it feels like your snot is freezing. Can you imagine what it's like? After going through all that trouble to get to the stadium, it turns out you can't just get on right away either. But just watching people ride outside looked so much fun, so I started stopping the athletes, using my broken English, to ask them all sorts of questions. I even exchanged emails with them and gradually satisfied my curiosity one by one. Then, one day, there was a World Cup competition held in Calgary. The Korean national team athletes also participated in that competition. At the stadium, I met Coach Lee Yong, who was the national team's coach back then, as well as the national team athletes. And at that moment, I told them that I really wanted to properly learn skeleton. Perhaps impressed by my passion, the coach explained in detail what I needed to prepare. So after returning to Korea, my full-fledged career as an athlete began. I trained hard, eating 8 meals a day. Until high school, I had never weighed more than 60 kilograms. As you can see in the photo, I was a literal stick figure. I was totally skinny. So I went on to gain some meat, eating 8 meals a day and exercising 3 times a day between meals. So I built myself up to 80 kilograms, and a year later, I was proudly selected as a national team athlete. Now, this is a moment for an applause. Thank you. But then, I lost one of my goals. A lot of people ask me what it feels like to ride skeleton. The top speed can reach up to 140 kilometers per hour. When you go around a curve, it feels like you're flying through the air, like Superman. But Superman can look down from above, right? However, in skeleton, the faster you go, the narrower your field of vision becomes. The reason is that the force of gravity is so intense that for most women, you might not even be able to lift your head at first. That's how much gravitational force you feel, up to about 5G. So your head just gets forced down like this. So what do you think happens then? You start to feel more afraid. You're going fast, but you can't stop. You even start to think, should I just get off of this? But there's no way you can get off. Once it starts, it's a just go. So what I have to do here is relax. Your body tenses up on its own when the gravitational force gets stronger and your vision isn't secured. Only by controlling this and relaxing can you accelerate more and get better results. Through skeleton racing, I learned how to let go of that tension. Some people also ask this kind of question. If you're just lying on the sled, doesn't it just go down on its own? People tend to ask this, but it's not true. You really have to use all your muscles from head to toe to control yourself on the sled. That's why for that 1-minute race, you pour all your strength into it. To be able to control at high speeds in the competition venue, I had my own training method that made it instinctive for my body. Since I couldn't practice as much as overseas athletes before competitions, I would put my sled in the hotel room, then wear my helmet, and turn on a fan. It kind of seems similar, right? I would make it as similar as possible and do image training hundreds of times. Sometimes, after practicing alone late into the night when I was really exhausted, I even ended up sleeping right on top of the sled. Before the Pyeongchang track was built, I used to spend about 7 months a year overseas. Once, while training in Whistler, Canada, I lost control at the last curve, ending up bumping into a wall, and suddenly I couldn't breathe. So after it was over, I went to get a check and was diagnosed with a cracked rib. Since then, I couldn't do sliding training for about a month. While training, I've seen athletes hit their heads on the ice, experience concussion symptoms, or even faint. I've also seen athletes with their sled flipped over get burns and end up needing major surgery. Since this sport involves so many unpredictable injuries, it was extremely tough to train abroad. On top of that, it's not a popular sport. Because of that, there was no military sports team for my event. So I had to enlist as a regular active duty soldier. After I was discharged, I rejoined the national team, but there just wasn't enough time to prepare for the Olympics. So in the end, I wasn't able to achieve my long-held dream of competing in the Pyeongchang Olympics. When my very first challenge and the dream I had devoted my entire 20s fell apart like that, it was honestly so hard to endure. Although I had really pushed myself to the limit in pursuit of this challenge, and I did achieve my dream of becoming a national team athlete, it felt like all of it vanished like a mirage, and I was left with nothing in my hands. I thought my 20s was just going to end in vain like that. And then, just 3 days before the Olympics, I suddenly got a call. I answered the phone, and the call was from KBS. I wondered, why would KBS look for me? And it turned out they wanted to cast me as a commentator for the Pyeongchang Olympics. So, although I wasn't able to achieve my goal of winning a gold medal in skeleton, I did gain valuable life skills. And one of those was image training. Even though I didn't know any English and just watched others ride in minus 30 degrees in Calgary, I still managed to become a national team member. It might just be self-conceit, but I thought that, at least for my sport, I could probably do a good job as a commentator. So after taking on such a tough challenge, anything I tried next seemed easier by comparison. Commentators are usually cast at least a month before the Olympics, but in my case, I was called in just 3 days before, so I only had 3 days to prepare. The broadcasting station didn't have any materials prepared for me. So I started by translating foreign websites, gathering materials, and studying and preparing on my own. I felt a new kind of excitement in the process because you get only one chance going live. You can't take back what you say. Because of that, I started doing the same image training I used to do when I competed in skeleton. I wrote scripts, kept playing match videos, and practiced repeatedly. Although I wasn't able to compete, it was the first Winter Olympics ever held in our country. Also, my roommate, Yoon Sang-bin, became the first Asian to win a gold medal in skeleton, so I was truly overjoyed. And secondly, the life skills that skeleton taught me became a great source of strength for my next challenge. As I have mentioned earlier, the Olympics was something I greatly admired. Although I wasn't able to fulfill my dream of competing in the Olympics, I came up with a new dream after my retirement. I wanted to become a sports administrator and send my own athletes to the Olympics and support them. So I started with the second skill I learned from skeleton, letting go of tension. Although I was already 29 years old, I decided to start as an intern. To learn about sports administration, I personally sought out IOC member Yu Seung-min to learn directly from him and gain experience. It wasn't easy, of course. One particularly memorable day was when we traveled 1,100 kilometers in a single day. Early in the morning, Mr. Yu traveled from Busan to Seoul for a meeting in Busan regarding the World Table Tennis Championships. Then we went straight to Chungcheon. There, we conducted an interview for the Pyeongchang Memorial Foundation. And then in the evening, we came back to Seoul. At the office, he was attending international meetings with the IOC and various international federations. Looking at this, I feel like I am really lacking in my schedule, and I am really enjoying Korea and sports. I could really feel how much he is making a significant contribution. And now, my new dream of becoming a sports administrator has become even more solid. Oh, I almost forgot to mention, let's play soccer together. We're really serious about winning, so when my team loses a match, although it's just a TV show, I can't sleep at night. I get so frustrated and my competitive spirit just flares up. So I ended up pulling out the final secret weapon I gained from skeleton. That is, making thorough plans. You know, the MBTI personality test, right? I used to be an ENFP. Yes, I was an ENFP. But as I went through my athletic career, making daily routines and writing journals, my P changed to a J. So now, I've become an ENFJ. I wrote in Evernote every single day during my time as an athlete. And this habit has stayed with me even after retiring. So, in order to win, of course, I work hard during team training, but I also make my own training schedules for personal practice, just like I did when I was doing skeleton. By the way, there are things I do besides broadcasting nowadays. I am now mainly working as an international sports administrator at the Pyeongchang Memorial Foundation. Since we now have sports facilities in our country, there are countries without snow, you know. We bring athletes from those countries like Africa, South America, and Southeast Asia to Korea. So for these athletes, there's the Gangwon 2024 Youth Olympics being held in Gangwon Province next year. I'm supporting them so that they can participate in Gangwon 2024. And in the long run, I'm helping them so they can compete in the Olympics as well. Honestly, just imagining these athletes actually making it to the Olympics is so thrilling and makes me really happy. Sometimes I wonder, if I hadn't left for Calgary to take on the reckless challenge of skeleton, or if I had given up on trying because I failed to qualify for the Olympics, or if I hadn't even considered taking on new challenges after that, what would have happened? I don't think I would have been here today. My career as a skeleton athlete was not a failure for me. It was a valuable opportunity that allowed me to expand my abilities for my next challenge. So, if there are things that you really like and want to try, and if you're still hesitating, just go for it. If you're gonna take on a challenge anyway, try something really tough. Of course, you might fail in that challenge, but that failure will help you grow even more. As I've mentioned earlier, in skeleton racing, there are no breaks. Once you start, no matter how fast you go, you have to finish the race. Even if you're not heading in the direction you want, you just have to keep going. Only by finishing can you avoid making the same mistakes again and gain the opportunity to climb back up. You gain courage and skill. I think life is actually the same way. So don't hesitate to take on challenges. And if you're going to do it, I hope you give it your all and go for it wholeheartedly. Also, if you didn't get the result you wanted, just think of it as a valuable lesson for your next challenge. Make it a cornerstone and become a better version of yourself. Thank you for listening to my story.